Alrighty. Hello, everybody. This is my first YouTube video, uh, and I am recording in a pitch black room. It looks really creepy. I'm looking at my monitor here, and it looks really eerie, so I apologize for that. Um, I don't want to show my face, and I don't want to reveal my identity. There's a lot of reasons, but the primary reason is I'm currently hiding from the Klan. Um, yeah, so that's a thing. And I just wanted to get out of the way at the beginning of the video. If you know who I am and you know my identity, um, and you have some, maybe you're a dangerous person or whatnot, just so you know, to provide some education, the state that I live in has a law called Stand Your Ground, which, if you don't know what that is, go ahead and look it up. Uh, I am left leaning, however. I do appreciate that law. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, that's just some education. Please don't take down this video, YouTube. As you can probably tell, I am not exactly a public speaker. I I don't do a lot of speaking or anything like that. So just bear with me. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to title this video. It'll probably be something to the effect of why I left MAGA or how I left MAGA or escaping MAGA or something like that. And really, it's just a way for me to just speak my mind and kind of get my thoughts out there. I've been working third shift for the last few years, and I've deconstructed a lot of the way that I grew up, a lot of the political and religious things that I was taught. And a lot of people sort of seized that opportunity of me not being present to sort of gossip about me, talk about me between family members and just people that I grew up with. And I was, I'm not around because I work third shift. So I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna buy a microphone and speak my mind to whoever wants to listen. All three of you that are listening to this, which is probably just me rewatching the video, to be honest. Um, but yeah, so uh, where do I begin? To give you a little bit of a background about me, I am the fifth child of eight children. My dad is an evangelical pastor. One of my older brothers is an evangelical pastor, very conservative, very MAGA. And I am pretty much the only left-leaning person in my intermediate family, and possibly out of anyone in my entire family, going back to like my grandparents and my cousins. I mean, we are very deep red, uh, and we're in a very red state. Um, yeah, and the last few years have really shifted my views quite a bit, and I just wanted to share some of that. Wanted to share that journey. The first time that I genuinely questioned anything that I was taught really goes back to my first year of college. And the idea of questioning anything that your parents taught you was such a foreign concept, uh, especially since we were homeschooled. I mean, I went outside 3 times a week: Sunday morning for church, Sunday night for church, Wednesday night for church. And occasionally, my mom would take me to Hy-Vee to go grocery shopping. I mean, that was it. So, you know, when you're raised like that, you're never shown the other side. You're never shown what the other argument is. You're always told this is right and this is wrong. And so, and you're taught really to question anything is Satan that's tempting you, right? That's how you're taught. So you just never question anything. Otherwise, you were, of the devil, which is literally the worst thing you can be. I mean, you don't negotiate with the devil, right? So, I'm raised this way of, this is right, this is wrong. And so the first time that I started to question anything, I felt so incredibly guilty. It was my first year of college. I was going to a community college at the time, and I was going to a speech class, ironically enough. And one of the assignments was to cover that now infamous Gillette commercial. I believe the slogan was something like "the best a man can be" or something like that. Basically, it was a hit piece on toxic masculinity, which is awesome, by the way. Uh, the, uh, the hit piece, not toxic masculinity. Um, so in my assignment, I was supposed to basically watch the commercial and then write a little piece on it and do a little speech on what I thought about the commercial. And so I saw this as a perfect opportunity to do that classic like Christian evangelical thing of stand up for what you believe in, in the classroom of all things, Christian, these Christian evangelicals love being a martyr, basically. And so I was like, this is the perfect time for me to stand up for what I believe in. And so I wrote my speech and I stood up there. And basically, my synopsis was, or my speech was basically, um, I agreed that all of these things that this commercial is depicting is wrong. However, this commercial is associating all of these negative qualities with masculinity, and I think that's wrong. Basically just regurgitating everything that I was taught. Uh, saying toxic masculinity is to say that masculinity is toxic, which it isn't. But that is that is the point that I tried to make because that is how I was taught. And so I did my little speech and I felt really conflicted when I was done because deep down I knew that uh, I definitely experienced and I know what toxic masculinity, or I knew what toxic masculinity was, even though I didn't know how to verbalize it. And so in my head, I was thinking I'm doing the right thing, but in I guess my heart, to use that analogy, I kind of knew that this commercial was touching on areas of masculinity that I personally have seen and witnessed and experienced that I believe were bad. And so it was just, for the first time, I had the opportunity to take ownership of one of the lessons I was taught as a child and to make my stand publicly. And it did not feel good. And I felt very conflicted. And I went home that afternoon and I did what I always did when I felt down, which was to watch these I believe it was Liberty Hangout. But essentially the gist of these videos is a person would walk around campus and they'd basically just make fun of uh, gay people, trans people, and just belittle them. That was basically what the content was. And I would watch these videos because it made me feel better about myself. Because at the time I wouldn't have said this, but I had very low self-esteem, and watching other people get belittled made me feel better about myself because I viewed myself as the bottom of the totem pole. But if I could dehumanize another group of people, then I could say that I was better than them. And that made me feel better by proxy, um, which is really unfortunate. And when I was watching this video, I went home and this person went around campus and started making fun of a trans person. And this trans person started to cry. And it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks where I was watching it and I was coming to the realization that I was taking pleasure in watching someone else suffer. And I felt so guilty. And it was horrible because I was coming home and I wanted to, binge watch these videos that I would always watch to make myself feel better because I was feeling conflicted about the speech that I had. And then I was met with, ironically, one of the elements of toxic masculinity of belittling others to make yourself feel more powerful. And I was realizing this. I was coming to a little bit of self-awareness in this moment, and I just felt so guilty. And that was, I would say, the first time that I genuinely tried to take ownership of one of the positions that I was taught as a kid, and I was coming to realize that I did not agree, and that was horrifying because if I if I can't just take everything that I was taught as gospel, as just absolute truth, then I don't really have that rock of right versus wrong because I'm questioning one of the beliefs that I was taught, and that was terrifying. But it was really good for me, but it was terrifying. And this took place, I would say, around 2019, and this was just before COVID, just before the BLM movement and all of that. And I wasn't really invested in politics that much. I would have said I was, Republican, MAGA, conservative, and all that, but I wasn't really invested in politics. Um, and then I don't want to get into it too much, but pretty soon after this point, I had, let's just say, uh, some really big mental health crisis, I'll just say. I didn't work a job. I didn't go to school. Very depressed. And, 2020 rolls around and you have COVID. And more importantly, at least to my journey, you had the Black Lives Matter movement happened that summer. And I remember my family just saying, "Oh, look at all these, these black people. They just want this special attention. Racism doesn't really happen. It doesn't happen on a mass scale anymore. They're, basically wannabe victims," which is totally ironic, coming from Christian evangelicals. Uh, but I remember hearing this, and I was a little confused. Being homeschooled, we basically didn't learn. We hardly learned any American history. We learned about like the Christian Reformation, and then we learned some like alternative history. But I had no idea about all of the sins of the American government throughout history. And so I'm watching all these protests, and I'm like, "Whoa, this is crazy! Like, surely." There's some truth to this, or there's some reason why everybody's going all crazy over this incident. And so I took it upon myself to learn about Black history in America, and holy cow, uh, it was very eye-opening. To learn about everything, not just about slavery, but also everything that happened after slavery, during the Jim Crow era. And I learned about what I would call now uh, institutional racism, or what's the word? Systemic racism. I wouldn't have called it that at the time. That's basically a trigger word for conservatives. But learned about things like redlining, and how the laws and the way that our country was shaped from the very beginning really uh, gave Black people and Black communities uh, a difficult time to do basic things like make a living or get a house, and how it still affects people today. And looking back, I mean, our family was super racist. I'm just gonna say, like, the casual racism. I mean, the casual jokes that I used to make. I mean, it is ironic. These people who will tell you that they were very scared about this dangerous place they went to, and you come to find out that it was just some, Black people that were there, and they felt unsafe, and they talked about how, don't go to this place because it's so dangerous. We were very racist, and yet we were the ones saying that racism doesn't exist. It's crazy. But anyway, I was learning about Black history, and I was, seeing everything that was happening with the Black Lives Matter movement. And, when I think it was my mom was like, or maybe it's my dad, was complaining about the Black Lives Matter movement. And, they said that saying, you're right, all lives matter, right? And I was like, hey, like, when you say all lives matter, what you're doing is you're sidestepping and ignoring someone else's struggle. If someone is being punched in the face and they say, hey, I'm important too, do you go to that person and say, hey, why do you want special attention? By saying all lives matter, uh, you're refusing to acknowledge their struggle and the way they're being treated. And I was coming to the realization that a black person's experience in this country might be different than mine. Um, and so that was just another chip uh, where I was starting to acknowledge and recognize the very blatant racism that was happening. And the other thing too was during this time I was going through sort of a mental health crisis, and I understood to an extent what it was like to have your struggle be ignored or to be told uh, that you're not really experiencing anything difficult and how small that makes someone feel. When someone tells you that everything you're dealing with isn't important or isn't real, it makes you feel like you don't matter. And, which makes the slogan Black Lives Matter incredibly relevant. When people are telling them that police brutality doesn't really exist or doesn't exclusively target, black individuals, it makes you feel like you don't matter. Uh, so I forget who it was, but there was this analogy that I heard, and the analogy goes like this: there's a there's a town, right? And there's all these different houses in the town, but one of the houses is on fire. And so they call, the firefighters, and the firefighters arrive, and they're, spraying the fire. But then all the people from the other houses come out of their houses and they go to the firemen and they say, "Hey, why are you giving this house special attention? All houses matter." And that really just resonated with me because I understood, or I thought at least I understood what the Black Lives Matter movement was about, and seeing my parents completely miss it, and seeing my conservative friends just completely miss it and not understand the message was really eye-opening. Because on the one hand, like, it is very cruel to just not acknowledge someone else's struggle and to tell them that they're not experiencing anything. It's very cruel, but it's also just stupid. Like, to not acknowledge reality is dumb. And for the first time, my heart was like aligning with my brain a little bit, and it's another one of another one of those chips. And so after this point, some time passes, and I'm finally, getting my life back together. I went back to school, and I'm totally not paying attention to politics. I'm just focusing on getting my life back together. And 2021 goes, and 2022 comes around, and I start paying a little bit of attention to politics because this is around the time that the invasion of Ukraine happens. And I've been having a lot of different disagreements with my parents, some political, some non-political, but everything's adjacent. I mean, when you grow up in Christian uh, evangelicalism, or you grew up in that conservative evangelical space, religion and politics are like completely intertwined. Like, you can't have one without the other. And I might get into it later, but I even had a sibling of mine um, question my faith because I was questioning Trump, which is hilarious. Because as we all know, Trump is a very good Christian, but that's another story. So around this time, the invasion of Ukraine happens, and I think, hey, maybe this instance, I can finally start agreeing with my parents and with, the conservatives and with MAGA. because surely we can all see that Russia, who is, the boogeyman of the Reagan Republicans, uh, there's so many stories and movies, uh, you see this dictator invade another country who is very pro-America. Ukraine is very pro-America, and the country's also very conservative. I mean, I'm not going to get into it too much, but they're the country is much more conservative than the EU and the United States, but they're pro democracy. And so I thought, surely we can all get together and agree that uh, supporting that supporting Ukraine is essential, not only just to protect an innocent country, but also to instill American dominance worldwide, which is very much a Republican way of thinking, with US aid and all that. And to my absolute shock, there was like both moral and intellectual ambiguity when it came to supporting Ukraine. And that, once again, just blew my mind. Uh, I could not understand. I mean, listening to my older brothers, listening to these friends that I grew up with, uh, side with Putin. I mean, to somehow think that because Putin and Russia uh, wants to quote unquote instill Christian values in their country because they want to put gay people in prison and they torture trans people, like somehow that makes, and that was the reasoning they were giving, like, yeah, I don't like Putin, but he does have a lot of Christian values, and that just blew me away. I mean, I knew very quickly that they were on the wrong side on that issue. And then I started paying attention to the Republicans in Congress who uh, were preventing aid to Ukraine. This might have been like a year later or sometime later, but they were preventing aid to Ukraine, the Republicans. And I was just so confused. And, I think there was at one point, there was some sort of bill that combined Ukraine or combined like aid to Ukraine, and it bundled it with like border security, and the Republicans turned it down. Uh, it, when they have been like saying over and over again that they wanted border security, and so it's just hypocritical, it's just intellectually dumb, just like dishonest. And I was seeing it with the Republicans and conservatives that I was talking with in my own personal life. Um, and so that was just, I mean, I knew I was, these people were on the wrong side of this issue just immediately. Sometime later, I finally got a job. And when I was looking for a job, I was applying at all these different places because, I didn't really have a passion, uh, but I knew I needed money. Um, so I started applying to these different places, fast food places, everything. I came across this one application, and it was titled Youth Counselor. And I read the description, and it was basically a social work job, or you would be a social worker. And I thought I saw that, and it immediately piqued my interest because, I mean, I had absolutely no motivation to work one of those jobs where the only point of your job is to make the guy above you more money. I mean, that's just so meaningless. But if I could work with, some youth who, by and large, have experienced much more worse things than I have, and maybe that would be a job that sounds interesting to me. So I applied, and lo and behold, I got the job. And that was a very hard, but a very, very good experience for me. I'm really glad I worked that job. Um, you know, Working as a youth counselor, not only do you see you see firsthand the effects of what happens when you remove those social safety nets, both with families and also with the individual kids. Um, and that was just really eye opening to see. Not only that, But I got to work with people of all different kinds of races and sexual orientations and gender orientations and gender identities. And, it was a little scary at first because I go there to work and here's this person of, this certain group who I grew up being told these people are X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be horrible. I really got to be careful. And then you work with them and they're just an amazing person. And I'm like, wow, uh, they're just like a person. Like it's not a big deal. And this would happen over and over again. I'd meet someone new and they'd be great. They're a person. They'd have their issues, sure. But like, one of my partners was a trans person and they were awesome. Like they were one of my favorite people. They had a great heart for the kids, you know. Um, I, I mean, it's crazy looking back, but it was a shock for me to meet these people and to realize that all of these stereotypes were just stereotypes and to treat every person like they're a person. Wow, what a concept. um and yeah, I was working a job and I realized that my job, I'm getting paid through fi- uh through government aid. That's where my check is coming from. And seeing all of these conservatives trash talk government aid and to just say that anyone who uses government aid is just, this lazy person that doesn't want to, work a job or anything. And I'm seeing these kids and I'm like, are you saying that investing in these kids is a waste of funds? Like that this is a waste of money? Because without government aid, these kids would either be A, they'd go back to their abusive homes, or two, they'd be homeless. Like, is that the conservative position? Like, I was starting to see the importance of, financial safety nets, and in particular, investing in programs for, to use a Christian term, for the least of these, right? For people that, life just decided to give them the middle finger. Why is it that conservatives loathe taking care of somebody? Like, I was starting to realize this, and it was just another chip. And it was during my time working as a youth counselor where I would say I officially left uh, the side of the Republicans and I crossed the center line over to the left of center position. During my time as a youth counselor, October 7th happened, and it was incredibly uh, tragic to witness and just to watch the news of everything that happened on that day. And to give a little bit of a backstory about my upbringing of our particular flavor of evangelical Christianity. We are very much, and by we I mean evangelical Christianity. We are very, very pro-Israel, basically to a fault. It's kind of creepy. I like looking back, like it is really just whatever Israel does, we must approve because it's Israel, and according to the Old Testament, Israel is God's people. Anyway, so I witnessed what happens on October 7th, and everyone in my family is like, oh, yeah, we support Israel. And at the time, I'm like, yeah, obviously you want to disarm Hamas because they're a terrorist group and they attacked a country and killed a bunch of people. That's obviously wrong. So, of course, I'm going to be on the side of Israel. And as time passes, um, you watch what happens and time keeps passing and people keep dying, and then the Israeli government says Hamas is no longer a force that's operable. And within the first couple of weeks they killed all of their leaders that were in Dubai. So and you start to wonder, like, okay, well, if Hamas is no longer in operation, why are you why are you still bombing Gaza? And then the response that I got was, well, they still have hostages. And that was confusing to me because Israel had multiple times broken their treaty with Gaza when they had ceasefires to exchange for the hostages, and Israel routinely broke those promises. And so it was clear to me that they clearly were accepting the fact or expecting that the hostages were already dead because they were basically had a zero negotiation with their efforts in Gaza. And so and I'm watching this and I'm kind of casually watching it, and news starts coming out of all the war crimes. I think the EU designates Netanyahu as a war criminal. And when that happened, I was like, whoa, okay, maybe I should pay more attention to this. And so I started looking into it. And you see these stories of, kids being shot by snipers. And, on Tuesday, uh, all of their hands are shot, and then on Wednesday, like they shoot, the genitals of the kids, and like you're seeing these reports, and you're like, what in the world is going on here? And then you have eyewitness testimony of Israeli soldiers saying, yeah, we're being told to just shoot kids, and we're being told to shoot anyone that goes for the food. And then you have the whole starvation thing that's happening right now, and you're watching this, and to my, I guess the term would be Zionist. That's the term that I've heard. I go to my family or my conservative community and I say, hey, like, I know we want to get rid of Hamas, but like shooting kids is wrong and stuff. And then I get called like a radical. Uh, and that's kind of confusing. Like, am I radical? Like, I don't know. Shooting children and shooting people that are trying to get food. I guess as revenge at this point, there's not really a reason for them to be in Gaza, right? It's just revenge, basically. Like, I don't know. Am I am I a bad Christian for going against the Israeli government because Israel and and my view is committing horrible, horrible atrocities. Uh, yeah. So I mean, it's just another one of those things where it's like, to me, it's clear that the Israeli government is committing mass crimes. I mean, it's very well documented at this point. I mean, most of the population of Gaza is children. So, I had a conversation with my mom, and she basically justified the killing as, well, all those kids are already radicalized, and one day they will almost certainly join Hamas, which is insane. That's just an insane thing to say. And to hear that, everyone at my church essentially have the same position. Like, you're guilty because you were born there, basically. You were born in this land under this regime. Therefore, we think it's okay for you, like, for you to die. For these children to die. That's totally fine. And not only is that fine, but that is the quote unquote Christian position. Um, and when I start hearing this, it's just more confirmation. Like, I'm not exactly sure I'm not exactly sure where I am on the left, if I'm center left or far left. I'm not really sure. I'm still in free fall. We'll see where I land, I guess. But I know for a fact I'm not on the right anywhere. And then you have that whole thing. This is kind of recent, but you have that whole thing with Trump posting his AI video of a golden statue in the middle of Gaza, calling it Trump Gaza or something like that. And you have him talking with Netanyahu, basically saying, "Yeah, this is the land of Gaza is great real estate," and basically making plans to just depopulate the entire place and getting everyone who lives there out of the country and turning it into basically this resort. Um, which is, I mean, what words can you really say? Like, imagine if Russia's like, oh, hey, there's the USA. That place would make a great hotel spot. That would be such a great look at all that beautiful land. And then they started working with another country to depopulate hard. I mean, why is it so difficult for some people to just put yourself in someone else's shoes? Like, imagine if anyone else said anything remotely similar to our country or to our state. Like, it's insane. Like, the way people are so comfortable dehumanizing an entire population of people is genuinely scary. And and so 2024 rolls around, it's election year, and I'm really starting to pay attention to politics at this point. I'm listening to all the campaign speeches, and I'm getting really invested because I'm coming to the realization that I am on the left, and this is honestly a really important decision to make as far as what I believe. And so I'm really paying attention to politics, and it's like the more I paid attention to politics, the more left I got. Because up to this point, I really hadn't paid much attention to Trump. But when you start paying attention to Trump, you realize just how stupid he is. And I mean, just how horrible of a person he is. Like when you had that debate and he basically just called all of the Haitian immigrants illegals, and the infamous they're eating the cats and dogs, and you learn that that originated basically from a Nazi organization. And I start to learn that, hey, these right-wing hate extremist groups are very real, and they are being empowered by Trump, and how Trump gives all of these sort of dog whistles to those groups. And, I guess to reference the beginning of this video, like I came to the realization that yeah, this stuff is very real. Um, and so, you know, the more I would pay attention to politics, pay attention to Trump speeches, as someone that desires to live in truth, it's just very annoying to listen to Trump speak. Um, and I pretty much made up my mind that year that yeah, no matter what happens, I'm gonna vote for whoever the other candidate is. And so time passes, and we come around to the election, and it's around this time where I'm starting to be a little bit more vocal about my position on politics and religion to my family. Not super aggressive, but it's just hard to go to a family dinner or go to like Thanksgiving at a gathering, and you're just hearing all of these right wing talking points that are just so brain dead. And to just say nothing, like it was genuinely physically painful to sit through that and to not say anything. And so I'd have some conversations here and there, particularly about racism and the whole craze about Latinos and deportations and the demonization of foreigners just in general. With the excuse being legality, but of course it's not about legality. Um, and so I'd have these conversations, and start being made out to be, uh, I guess, uh, people start to realize that I'm not part of the in group anymore. And that was pretty scary because I was starting to witness these people who I greatly respected, who taught me, who were my Sunday school teachers, who were my older siblings that, of course, you grew up idolizing, to see these people treat you in a way that you've seen them treat other people, but you never thought you would be treated that way. You thought you would always be in the in group. And you're starting to realize that the respect, the love, the kindness was all conditional. None of it was based on uh, them loving you or caring about you. It was based on whether or not you are part of the in group. And if you're part of the out group, you get treated very differently. And so I'm starting to realize this, and you know, it puzzles me. I guess I can talk a little bit about religion, not a ton, but it just puzzles me. The correlation between MAGA and Christianity is just so different. I'm taught to love your enemies, and MAGA says crucify your enemies, essentially. And you're seeing all of these contradictions, and Yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with this. I guess I just wanted to sit down and share some of these things because, yeah, I don't talk very much. I don't talk to very many people. Um, yeah, well, I guess that's it for this video. I'm kind of tired of talking, so we'll see. Maybe I'll make more videos about things more detailed about certain conversations and stuff. But yeah, I guess that's all for today. Thanks for listening.